Salam, Ko here. So as I wrote this story, I learned something interesting. The game Snakes and Ladders originates from India, and it goes back to the 2nd century BC. Eventually, the English took it to England, and in 1943, it came to America, where it was called Chutes and Ladders. Growing up in our family, we used to play Snakes and Ladders a lot. As an adult, working for Dad also felt like playing a game of Snakes and Ladders, because we never knew which way things were going. And there are a couple of other notes I would like to include. Electrical wire and the way they size it, it's not intuitive. 14 gauge is actually smaller than 12. And so when Dad was trying to put 12 gauge wire into all of these houses, eventually he realized it just wasn't worth the cost. And he switched to 14. Welcome to Storytime with Kumars. My name is Ko Jijina. This is my story titled A Game of Snakes and Ladders. You can see it as a parable on life. Dad's decision to farm some of the work out was encouraging. The sheetrock was a given, but plumbing and electric took a while. Framing, insulation, siding, and carpentry work, as well as finishing work, were all on us. With the first house at 326 Northwest 88th Street, Dad ran into problems with the electric work we had done ourselves, a couple of failed inspections. The city cited code violations, but Dad felt the inspector was tough on us because we did not use a licensed electrician. Electric work was not something Dad had done before. We tinkered, but nothing serious, like wiring a house. There was also the issue of the rentals that had left a bad taste in Dad's mouth. Take, for example, Market Street, Midvale, and the 18th Avenue home, which Brother eventually bought. They all had the old knob and tube wiring, along with screw-in fuses. Back in the early 1900s, they worked fine. When you had few appliances, and the primary heating source was wood or oil. As people bought more electronics, the wiring could no longer keep up with demand. In the winter months, the renters kept calling because the fuses were blowing. As Dad tried to figure out what to do, some tenants used the old copper penny trick, which Dad hated because it might burn down the house. With all this in mind, Dad went way overboard with the wiring on the first house. The second house is where the story comes in. At 615 Northwest 76th Street, Dad had a plan. He would hire a licensed contractor to lay the wiring and install the fuse box. Then they would call the city for an inspection. Expecting it to pass on the first go-around, we would go in and finish the work, like install the lighting, fixtures, switches, and plugins, and still save a boatload of money. Dad hummed and hawed, as it took a couple of weeks for the guys he hired to work us into their schedule. Not sure where he found them, but they met Dad's price. Cheap. Since there was no piles of rock to be moved, lumber without knots to be bought, or walls to be restrung, because we started from the wrong side, Dad gave Brother and I a couple of days off. I liked these guys already. Finally, the big day came. The electricians would arrive in the morning, and Brother and I would join them after school to help out. When we got there, Dad was fuming, and the electricians were nowhere to be found.
Stupid idiots!
As beads of bubbling sweat were amassing on Dad's forehead before dripping down his face. At times like these, it was best to say nothing as I carefully searched the area around me for booby traps.
Swines used a chainsaw to cut a path through the studs instead of drilling holes. They said that's what they had to do to save time and meet budget. They would put a metal plate over the hole and that would be all right. I told them, look here, these walls support the entire structure of the building. You cannot just cut through it like that. I stopped them and I sent them home.
Next, he spoke to Brother and I, giving us our marching orders.
You boys will help them by drilling holes, and then you can feed the wire through. I've never seen such worthless idiots like this.
I walked into what would become Brother's bedroom. It was where the circuit breaker box was located. What I saw helped me to understand why Dad was so upset. Over the next few days, Brother and I worked with the electricians, adding 2x4s adjacent to the ones that had been chopped, drilling holes and feeding wire. The electricians were two men in their mid to late 20s, and as we worked with them, we got to know them. Placing some of their work practices aside, they were two good-hearted fellows. Under normal conditions, Dad was difficult to work with and his patience short. When he spoke to us, he snapped, something Brother would learn to do from Dad as he grew older. The two men were not used to seeing someone behave like this, and started understanding what it was like to work for Dad, with the long hours and short temper. After a week, things seemed to be settling down between Dad and the men. Then there came a second wave that would push Dad over the edge. I was not sure I could side with Dad on the second wave.
Those stupid idiots are using 14-gauge wire. I told them, look here, you're supposed to use 12-gauge wire.
Dad got upset. His piercing eyes came out.
Not only that, but you're using regular wire, and I want outdoor ground contact wire. They argued with me. No, code is 14, not 12. Who uses ground contact wire indoors? That's the way they bid it. If I want them to change it, they would have to rebid the job. I told them, if this does not pass the city inspection, I'm not going to pay you. Then they tell me, it will pass the city inspection, and if you don't pay us, we will place a lien on your property. I told them I was going to call the city inspector right away and settle this once for all. I've had it with these worthless people. Stupid idiots. Swines!
The 12-gauge ground contact wire Dad made us use in the first house was stiff, difficult to work with, and murder on the hands. The cramps ate me alive and hurt at night as I tried to sleep. A couple of days later, the city inspector came and left while I was at school. Later that evening, Dad came home, rather upset.
Those swines, they must know each other. Such corruption I have never seen. They are all chummy-chummy. The inspector comes and tells me it's fine. Why do I want to put in so much power into a bedroom? He tells me 20 amp service is too much. If anyone gets electrocuted, it can kill them. 15 amps are safer. I try to explain, I don't want to deal with circuit breakers tripping all the time. Then he tells me the new circuit breakers are better than the old ceramic fuses, and I shouldn't be worried so much. I don't believe him.
After that, Dad was pretty much done with them. Couldn't even stand the sight of them. All he wanted was for the two to be done and out of there. I have a memory of Dad giving me instructions to help the two men pack up and get out. He was somewhere in the building. As we were almost done, the older of the two spoke to me. We have seen the way your dad treats the two of you, the way he makes you work and the hours you put in. In this country, there are child labor laws. If you want to copy or to get a hold of someone to talk to, I can help you. All you have to do is say something. A total stranger had understood and reached out to us. Having been validated meant a lot to me. On the other hand, I was so nervous not knowing how Dad might react if he overheard the conversation, I was paralyzed. It was one thing to talk and vent, but this was going a step further and I was not sure I was ready for it. I thanked him, but the timing wasn't right.